Okay, we have the live stream started.
Great. Thank you, Janice. All right, everybody, welcome to the December 13th CVTA Technical Advisory Committee meeting. This is a 100% virtual meeting, and the public participation is details are listed on the website. And we will now do roll call and certification of a quorum.
Just 1 second. Okay, Town of Ashland, Miss Amos.
Here.
Charles City County, Miss Russell.
Here.
Chesterfield County, Miss Smith.
Here.
Miss Walker. Richland County, Mr. Coleman.
Here, I'm promoting her over.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Here.
Hanover County, Mr. Vadunez. Mr. Flagg. Henrico County Chair Yor.
Here.
Miss Smidler.
Here.
New Kent County, Mr. Stoddard. Miss Leduc. Powhatan County, Mr. Shardine. City of Richmond, Miss Clark. Mr. Bridewell. DRPT, Miss DeBrule.
Here.
Miss Dubinsky.
Here.
VDOT, Mr. Mann.
Here.
Mr. Riblet. Virginia Port Authority, Miss Nelson.
Here.
GRTC, Miss Robinson.
Here.
RMTA, Miss Dean. And Plan RVA, Mr. Parsons.
I'm here. I also saw Liz McAdory's here for VDOT.
Okay, I'll take care of that. And that concludes the roll call. We do have a quorum.
Thank you, Janice. Next item, consideration of amendments to the action meeting agenda. Chet, do we have any amendments?
No, sir, we don't.
Okay, very good. Next item 2, approval of the November 8th, 2021 CVTA TAC meeting minutes. If everybody has had a chance to review, unless there's any corrections or changes, we'll entertain a motion.
This is Tom, so moved.
Thank you, Mr.
Dora
Coleman.
Amos, second.
Thank you. All right, we have a motion, a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, minutes are approved. Next item, public comment period. Do we have anybody registered for public comment?
No, we do not.
Okay.
And I have an email from Mr. Vadunez. I'm going to check that and hopefully we'll be able to get him in just a second as well.
Okay, thank you. Next item is the TAC chairman's report. I have nothing outside of the agenda to report. So that will move us to item 5, CVTA TAC staff update. Chet?
Yes, sir. I just wanted to update everyone. The finance committee meeting, the last finance committee meeting was November 10th. And the minutes for that meeting are posted on the website, but just the highlights. There was a closed session to discuss. Well, am I looking at the right thing? Rather than speak incorrectly, minutes are posted on the website for the finance committee. I don't know if anybody had any questions about the discussion that was taking place. I think one thing that is pertinent to this group is that there was a discussion of financial advisor services and interviews that took place. the full authority. Well, it may have been the Finance Committee as well. Decided to hold off on taking any further action on those on that potential hiring of a firm to guide the advisory services process. And as far as we know, that has not been rescheduled to as a discussion item. But I think that the impact for this group, especially as we're talking about project prioritization and selection, is that role would be to help us navigate the waters of getting into the bond market and potentially leveraging available funds for larger pursuits. So we'll look to take guidance from the authority and the Finance Committee over the next maybe this month or maybe into January in terms of next steps and when that might be put back on the full agenda. Mr. Chair, other than that, I don't think I have anything substantive from a staff update perspective.
All right, thank you, Chet. Yeah, that was discussed at the November Finance Committee meeting regarding the timing of the hiring of the financial advisory firm. Also, not to change the subject, Janice, we just got word from Dirona. She needs the link, I guess, to register for today's meeting.
Okay, I will send that to her now. Oh,
Great.
she's in. I'm going to move her over as panelist now. She just came in, and so is Mr. Vadunez now.
Okay, there's Mr. Vaidunas. And Dirona, are you in? There you are.
There she is. Yes.
All right, welcome. Next item is item 6, regional project prioritization. I guess Chet, you and I are gonna tag team on this. You want to start out with item A?
Sure. Yes. So looking at the agenda, item A, 6A is FY23 to 26 project application preliminary overview. And this will be a really quick item because we don't have any project applications submitted at this point. I just checked the database, and hopefully everyone we've fielded some questions from some of you in terms of the applications. It's a PDF that was sent out to everyone for your use. There are some drop-down menus that we have figured out don't work if you're using the Internet Explorer or Edge, I guess is what it is. It does work in Chrome and Firefox, as well as if you just open it up with an Adobe product like a PDF reader. But there's a submit button at the end of the application, and that will convert everything and put it in a Google Drive folder where staff can access it and start the evaluation process. Right now, that deadline is Friday, the 17th, to get those applications submitted for consideration of FY23 to 26 regional funding. Following that date, if you look at our regional, the green calendar sheet that everybody should be familiar with, staff will start to compile and review those projects for eligibility. We're going to be working, later on in the agenda this morning is talking about third-party reviews, doing model runs for new projects, and then scoring and ranking. And that entire review is scheduled to be done by March 1st, so that we can keep things moving for smart scale applications later on next spring. So that's the preliminary review, Mr. Chair. We'd, as I said, we don't have any direct applications as of yet. Honestly, if anybody on the phone today, if you're willing to have that discussion now, Todd, if anybody has any questions about the application process or the functionality of it, we're happy to try and answer any questions we can now, or we can do that after the fact once the meeting's over.
Sure, we can take questions on that now. My guess is all those questions will come on Friday afternoon.
Yes.
All right, seeing no questions on that, we ready to move to item B under that agenda item?
Oh, Mr. Chair,
Yes, Darren.
sorry, this is Diana. I did have a quick question. Let's see if I can give me a camera here. I just had a quick question for Chet. If we wanted to talk, how best to talk with, I guess, the TPO staff, if there's like some conversation on applications that the TPO would be submitting. So I guess my question, can somebody refresh my memory? Does the TPO can they submit for CVTA?
No.
I don't
I just
believe
couldn't
so.
remember. But then the question goes for the smart scale then Chet. So just maybe offline, maybe we can try to discuss that.
Sure.
All right, any other questions on application process? Okay, next item B, schedule refinement, additional details. So I asked Chet to include this item in here because I think we need to probably have some discussion on opportunities to adjust, refine, revise schedules after the initial submission, because we do have a time lag between the submission of CVTA regional applications and the smart scale application process. And since a number of localities, we do anticipate submitting CVTA regional applications to help leverage smart scale. That was one of the reasons it's driving this aggressive schedule for the next round of allocations. I guess we needed to kind of talk through opportunities to adjust as we refine estimates for the smart scale process and to the pre-application window for smart scale round 5, which is the month of March, pretty much. And then I guess further consideration will be beyond that as smart scale applications get validated and schedules adjusted, or we anticipate being locked in on the regional commitment for any projects that are submitted for leveraging smart scale. So Chad, I don't know if you want to weigh in on that.
I really don't, Todd. I mean, if there's anything that anybody else on the committee wants to share at this point.
So I guess I'm the only one with trying to figure out in my head how we can change numbers, and what's the deadline for being able to adjust estimates for the regional applications once submitted as estimates get refined going into smart scale, or is that a non-issue?
Hey Todd, this is Tom.
Yes, Tom.
I'm not in your head, but I probably would welcome some flexibility on that, because speaking for Goochland, we're still figuring out how we would want to strategize the leveraging. So if we had some additional flexibility on this, that the timeline to just those numbers, that may be helpful for us.
All right, thank you for that input.
This is Barb.
Yes, Barb.
I thought there was time in here for the reworking, if adjusting and rescoring.
We did talk about that as part of the project process that Chessa led. And
The first schedule that we had worked on before it turned green had a time for a rescore where people could adjust their request and the projects would get rescored. So did that get removed?
I don't see it in the green version. If anybody else knows where that is in there, or if that's implied somewhere, that would be helpful to know.
I think the review process up until March 1st is where it's implied, but if we wanted to add in a date, so that everybody could put something on your calendar, we're happy to do that.
I think that would be helpful to the group. I know this,
Yeah.
did we take action, or did the full authority take action on this schedule? And if so, is this just a internal working date that we need to add?
Yes, they did. The authority did approve the schedule.
Okay. And I don't know that we need to take it back to them to revise or to approve a revised schedule, since we're not really changing dates. We're just adding something for our own working purposes. So based on that, what's your comfort level on the intake side in terms of
I honestly, if it's okay with the TAC, since this is the first time we're doing this, it might make sense to see what the applications look like after Friday's deadline, and see what kind of additional work needs to be done. I think there's enough flexibility built in where we can set a date that has some range to it, but it might be nice to just see what kind of internal work we're gonna have to do, and the work to review the estimates before kind of setting a date to have revisions it back.
yeah, that should be fine. Our next meeting for TAC is scheduled for January 10th. So
Right.
I guess we can take this back up then, and see how things look. If everybody else is good with that, we can put that item to rest for now, with the understanding that we will revisit it. Okay, so that would move us to item 6C, next steps. Chet, you want to cover that?
Yeah, so the next steps, I kind of went over it briefly, but so following Friday, the 17th, we'll see what the project applications are. Staff will review their eligibility based on the framework that was adopted by the authority. We will then kind of look at the splits between existing and new projects, and see what kind of work needs to be done to set up model runs with the travel demand model for testing. We'll get that in process and do those runs, score and rank everything. And that'll be all Plan RVA staff internal review. A lot like we did with the long range plan or with STBG, CMAQ applications. I think the last item there under 6C4, third party estimate review, is kind of where we were looking from guidance from the TAC in terms of how best to move forward with identifying how that could be done, who would be doing it, and the timeline for that. And I believe this is all in the framework, or at least it's identified there. So that's where the third party review came from. Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to listen now if anybody has ideas on the best way to move forward with this part of the process.
Okay.
This is Barb.
Yes, Barb.
So Chet and I, we've talked about this some already. And we put out some options. One of them was for someone to check on the public procurement process and the dollar amount to see if there was a more simplified version to get a fee from a consulting firm. So the two options we had talked about were having CVTA enter an agreement with the locality to use a locality's on-call on a reimbursement type basis. But then I thought it might be, if the dollar amount were low enough, maybe, and I have no idea because I don't pay attention to that. Someone else here on this call might know. But if the dollar amount were low enough, maybe it's not all that complicated just to get quotes and move forward that way.
I don't think, as I sit here, we have any idea. Maybe somebody from VDOT, since they use a similar process for smart scale validation, there's any guidance they could offer.
This is Diana. I don't know if VDOT is going to answer, but I just know for the cities, and I was just thinking about Plan RVA's procurement process as far as like 3 quotes under $100,000, just doing that process. So I guess the question would be, Chet, what's the procurement processes that, CVTA has been operating thus far, or, do we create any procurement parameters?
Yeah, Dorena, I don't really know. I don't have an answer for you right now. We'll have to look back at it. I mean, the only contract we've had was with AECOM for the transit governance. And that was a really small contract. So we'll have to go back and take a look through the guidance documents and see what the options are for us. At least on the Plan RVA TPO side, we've been, I see Eric's raising his hand, but the Plan RVA TPO side, we've been able to utilize the bench contracts that DRPT and VDOT have. And that's worked out really well for a lot of the work that we've been doing here. I'm not sure. I would assume that could be a possibility for CVTA as well, but we'll have to clarify that.
So Chet, if I can, for DRPT, our contracts are written that any agencies that receive funding from DRPT can write off of our contract. So Plan RVA can write off of our contract, but because CVTA doesn't receive funding from DRPT, they would not be able to. And what you're trying to do is very similar to what we do with the merit process. And so we do have that capability on our bench contract.
Okay, thanks.
And to Chet, if I may, to add to that, Mr. Chair, as well, we've been complying with the Virginia Public Procurement Act generally as the baseline, of course. But the CVTA has not developed thus far its own procurement policies and procedures. So that's something we'll need to work on, but we haven't had that direction yet, and we haven't had that need quite yet. But we're definitely getting there, obviously.
Thank you, Eric, and thank you, Mr. Brule. So,
this is Shane.
yes, Shane.
Hey, sorry. Yeah, obviously it's going to depend on how many estimates you need looked at. But I think for the last round of Smart Scale, about 30 estimates, VDOT paid about $150,000 for assistance from consultants. So that kind of gives you a ballpark where we were at on the last round of Smart Scale.
That's good to know. Mm-hmm.
And I guess maybe part of the formula here, math, would be to what degree review do you need of the estimates? Is it a Smart Scale level review or a higher level review? Because that would, I assume, would impact the cost as well.
And I guess for Mr. Chair, for a point of clarification from VDOT, Mr. Mann, I mean, it could be, and I would assume that y'all's contractor was, is that eligible for Plan RVA as well?
Drew, I'm not sure the answer to that. I apologize, but I don't know if you guys would be able to write off of our contract or not. I can find out for sure, but I don't know.
Mhm. And then, Mr. Chair, if it may be, in lieu of time, it may be that with DRPT, and I don't know if there's a particular one, Jennifer, that does the merit, or if there's 5 of them that does it, in which a scope could be kind of sent to those to see the lowest cost. But it sounds like something that we definitely need to think about how we're going to approach it, and whether we need any finance committee or full body assistance in getting it done.
Yeah, that's a good point, Dorona. Do you have this in the budget? So, Chet, I mean, I think that's a little bit of guidance and input. Does that help you, or?
Yeah, it does. We've got some homework to do to figure out what our options are, and we can certainly outline that and send it back out to the committee if that's your preference. We do need to note that Finance Committee was canceled for December, so they'll meet next in January. So I guess like everything else, we don't have a whole lot of time to do anything, but we'll need to figure out the direction probably at our January meeting in coordination with Finance Committee.
This may be a Eric question as much as anything, but since there's a MOU between Plan RVA and CVTA on sharing of staff and resources and whatnot, does that allow through that MOU the ability to use the bench contracts from DRPT, for example, from the Plan RVA side?
I believe that was our understanding, that due to Plan RVA's support for CVTA, that Plan RVA would serve as an agent for procurement and other purposes, at least for while CVTA was getting established. Now that CVTA is starting to do its own thing and having to procure its own services and goods and services, if you will. I don't know about how many goods it's buying, but services certainly. I would recommend that CVTA start undertaking more of that on its own. And so to that end, I would recommend some policies and procedures be adopted. They'll probably wind up being very, very similar to what CVTA or to what Plan RVA already has in place itself. We'd probably use those as a model, but they would be independent of Plan RVA.
Duly noted, but back to Chet's previous point, just due to the really aggressive timeline for this process, I don't know that we have necessarily the opportunity to put all of those measures in place. So this may be something to take back to the Finance Committee to see their appetite for kind of following the current model or the model we've been following for the last year and a half.
I think that would be wise.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I was thinking, and probably what you all were thinking as well, is maybe the contingency line, and then we, but again, we would have to get quotes, but use a contingency line, the Finance Committee, to ask for the funds to be placed in a line item for the scoring. And then, but yeah, Eric, would that move from that contingency line up into the budget still require full body?
I don't know if I have an answer to that question. I'll have to, let me.
Please, my answer to my questions today. Just kidding.
I'll touch base with Chet about that and see if we can come up with some guidance. I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. Thanks, just joking.
All right, thanks. So yeah, I mean, like I said, we have a couple weeks before the Finance Committee meeting, so maybe can figure out at least what to bring to them in advance of that meeting to get some guidance so we can keep this process moving.
Yeah, we'll
All right,
get working.
go ahead. All right, anything else on that particular item, Chet?
No, sir.
All right. So no other questions, comments, observations on item 6 for the regional project prioritization. We can move into the fall line working group update from the initial group meeting.
Hey, Todd, this is Chessa.
Yes, Chessa.
Real quick before we move on, Chet, I think back to the schedule, when Chet was showing the green schedule, I think if you just pan to the second page, it has in there the steps for the iterative submissions if you want to change your leveraging amounts. So there's some dates in there that speak to when you have to have those edits into TAC or into the process. So it's in the schedule that was approved on the last page.
On the last page.
I mean, I have it up if you want me to share real quick. Let me see.
I see it on you have it for March 14th.
Yeah, so it's in there.
Draft funding scenario advised that any changes to local leveraging is due to staff by 3/28/22. So that's basically the back end of the window for smart scale pre-apps.
Yep.
Excellent. Thank you for finding that.
You're welcome.
Glad Chess is here.
Sorry. Moving on.
All right, so following working group. Initial kickoff meeting was sometime in November. I no longer remember the date. And then I think we've set the second meeting date for January. Also don't remember the date, but hopefully it's on everybody's. 12th, yes.
January 12th.
So several things have happened since the initial meeting. The full authority did take action to approve 104.5 million from FY 21 and 22 CVTA regional funds to the fall line with no designation on exactly which phases and how much for which phase. That's to be at least initially tackled at the working group level, and then we'll flow through, I guess, the full TAC and finance committee, and then back to the full authority, if I'm thinking of that correctly. Okay, and then separately, the Richmond District Commonwealth Transportation Board member, also a member of the CVTA, Carlos Brown, allocated, I don't have that dollar amount in front of me.
42.6.
42.6 of funding, I assume that's smart scale funding,
Yes.
to the fall line within the Richmond district. And then the governor made an announcement last Wednesday at Browns Island regarding proposed budget amendment items for consideration at the General Assembly for allocation of 122 million, I believe.
233.
I'm sorry, 233. You're right. For regional trails across the state, fall line being one of the 3 that was specifically mentioned. But unless there's been clarification out since Wednesday, we don't know what that allocation is amount specific to the fall line. Unless.
That's correct. We expect to see it when the budget's submitted this week.
Okay. And that still has to be approved by the General Assembly, correct?
Right.
So that's like I said, that came out in the press releases on Wednesday. So Shane, I don't know if you have any more clarity on your end of things regarding any of those allocations.
Yeah, I think you summed it up well, Todd. I think the question now is the CVTA funds aren't specified for any project, so we need to finalize that decision as you discussed. And then the 42, I had 42.7, Chet, so maybe it's 42,600,000 and some change. From the CTB is also not specified for specific projects. It just mentions fall line trail. So I got to get some clarity on exactly what that means and how we flesh that out as well with the CVTA, hopefully in cooperation, so we can make sure we're spreading that money out to appropriately to not overlap each other. So I think you hit all the highlights, Todd.
All right, well, thank you for the clarification. So at the working group level, we have a lot of ground to cover fairly quickly to put money where it needs to go, and I guess work on the spending plan, project delivery methodology, and all those aspects. So Shane, if there's anything you need in advance of that meeting from the group or members of the group, feel free to let us know. And I see several people have their hands raised. I'll start with Barb Smith.
The letter that was sent following the December 3rd authority meeting, did that go to Youngkin also?
No, it did not.
I don't know how these things work, but what
don't either.
people have explained to me is that there's an opportunity for him to approve the budget that we're talking about now. So it seems like we need to send a similar letter to him also. And then was anyone copied on that letter? Like people with the Senate or the House?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So maybe it's just Youngkin that we need to think about sending the letter to?
I have a question about that too. I thought there was some like kind of inheriting of the previous governor's budget for the next governor.
There is. It would be Northam's budget that would then be subject to some amendment by Youngkin during that process. So Northam submits the budget to the General Assembly. General Assembly does its thing and imposing its revisions and those kinds of things that goes through the General Assembly budget process. And then Youngkin would be able to influence that process, of course. And then he would have the opportunity to submit budget amendments through the budget amendment process. So that's my understanding of how it would work with a new incoming governor. So that's what we can look forward to. Barb, I think that's an excellent idea to send a copy of the letter to Youngkin's transition team as well. I'm sure he will be privy to that as the transition is moving forward, but certainly makes sense. You don't want to assume anything.
Yeah, not my idea, for the record.
Oh, sorry.
Other smarter people, including
Jerome. Well, anyway, yeah, good idea to send it along for sure.
Chad, if you need that to come from the CVTA chair, I can certainly prep them about that suggestion. If you want to, I guess you need some sort of draft cover letter to transmit it, right?
Yeah, we can put a draft together, Todd, if I can then send that through you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Joe, you had your hand raised.
Yes. Can somebody clarify the 42.7 was the accumulation of 5 or 6, maybe 7 projects in Chesterfield and Richmond? How did that work? Was Chesterfield and Richmond part of that decision to delete those projects?
No, that was, they found more money that they could apply to round 4 smart scale. And so the projects that you've seen on that list were sort of next in line for funding. So instead of Carlos just doing the next in line for round 4, he said, I'm going to just put this money towards Fall Line Trail.
Those projects that were in that original draft list were the staff recommendations, just based on the next tier that could be afforded out of the original ranking, as I understand it. So it was at his discretion as to.
So we've sacrificed for you and Henrico. We took a bullet for you guys. I'm sure you'll repay us in the future.
For the record, Henrico was Switzerland on that one, so.
Yeah. Okay,
Does that answer your question, Joe?
I think
Thanks,
so,
Barb.
as much as I need to know or want to know.
It's
Thank
the
you.
it's the sausage. Okay, so do we need to cover anything else on fall line updates, Chet, before we move to the draft standard agreement?
Yeah, that's where we are. And Eric's here to kind of walk through that with us, but we've got the draft agreement that the authority set up with VDOT back in, well, about a year ago, to consider as the standard template for what we need to do for authority locality as we continue to have this discussion about segmentation of the fall line and how funding gets distributed and who's going to administer projects and those kinds of things. So rather than just start with nothing, we pulled this up and put it on the agenda as a possibility to start the discussion. So I'll share that. Everybody see this?
Yep.
Okay.
Todd, I didn't know
So-
if you wanted, I'm sorry, Chet, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Eric. I've said all I can be worth saying right now.
Okay, Todd, I don't know if you want me to say a few words about this or.
Yeah, if you could come us up.
Yeah. Okay, sure. So this is the SPA standard project agreement that was an exhibit of the MOA between the CVTA and VDOT, as you recall, which was adopted. This is the draft, obviously, is noted at the top there, the November 24th draft, which was just before the MOA was approved. So this is to govern how projects are to be administered. CVTA projects with VDOT. This is a VDOT product with the OAG, and this is assuming that VDOT would be the administrator for the projects, which is the sort of general understanding with most CVTA projects. Of course, in the case of Henrico County, that's a little bit different. But this is the standard project agreement that we should use for everything. No need to reinvent the wheel for the fall line project. This is, as you will note, a little bit road and bridge centric. For instance, look at the last whereas on the first page there, it talks about highways and those kinds of things. So we need to add in some language to make this unique to a trail project. And of course, that's the idea behind this generic standard agreement. You know, we'll just tweak it as necessary for each particular project in consultation with everybody on the CVTA and with VDOT, of course. I don't know if Henrico has its own SPAs, or if Henrico is going to, how Henrico wants to handle the fall line trail project, but we're going to have something like this in place with Henrico, of course, too. So if I've talked very briefly or exchanged emails very briefly with Julie Whitlock at the Attorney General's office about this. She's the chief of the transportation section over there. Shane, I'm sure you know Julie and you've worked with her a lot before. A prior point of contact is no longer there. So Julie is on point with this. And so I'll be speaking with her about that. So Shane, to the extent that you want to offer input on this, you might want to route it through Julie, because she and I will be working on the revisions to this. And then, of course, if you all or your attorneys have input on the SPA for the fall line trail, please let them know, or you can circulate it directly to me or through your attorneys. But we're going to begin working on revisions immediately. See. Again, if you want to walk through the agreement on page 3, at the top there, the intended purposes of the project, we'll have to build in some trail language there, of course. make that a little bit more friendly to this particular project. Page 4, the payment requisitions reports, Appendix C, it references Appendix C. That talks about the flow of funds and how those that requisition and reporting process will unfold. So it's all, a lot of the heavy lifting on this is pretty well done. We just need to do some tweaks. So please review it. We're obviously very early in that process, but we need to get moving along. So let me know about your input. And if you have any questions right now, I'd be happy to try to answer them to the extent we can.
Mr. Chair, I got a question.
Yes, Jeff.
So Eric, would the logical direction be to revise this standard SPA to include the more inclusive language, or do a specific one that is carved out just for fall line type of trail work? That makes sense.
Well, I think we would use that. I would suggest, somebody else might have another idea that might be better, but I would suggest we use this as the agreement, and then we'll revise this to suit the fall line trail project, unless somebody has an issue with that or thinks that's a bad idea.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Eric, I have a follow-up related question. So you stated that this needs some tweaks to be more inclusive of the trail as a project. Is that something you want to do the first draft at it and then send out to either us to flow through the county, through our local attorneys, or you send out to the attorneys as you were working directly with them in the past, or do you want them to look at it concurrently?
It would, any of the above is fine. I've already started to sort of tinker with it a little bit in Word format. So I'll be happy to do an initial revised draft. But, at this point, if anybody has any input or major issues, I mean, I think structurally and fundamentally, the agreement is fine for this project and for any other project, of course, for the CVTA. But if there are issues, if you all see fundamental problems with how this might not work for the fall line trail for some reason, please let me know. But I'll start working on that and conferring with Julie over at the OAG about it. And then once we get sort of a first revised draft, I'll circulate that to the attorneys for the jurisdiction. So because we're going to have a CVTA VDOT SPA, which is going to govern the administration of the project, the whole entire project, that it's funded by CVTA. But, we're going to have to consider whether we're going to have project agreements with each jurisdiction as well. I'd like to avoid that because then it just gets more and more complicated and you're going to have a lot of potential conflicts. But for instance, the Henrico situation is a little unique. We're going to need to figure out how that's going to work with VDOT and the seams of the trails and who's going to, take charge of those particular parts. So I'm just sort of sharing where we are right now. Obviously don't have answers to all these questions, but just thinking it through.
No, I appreciate that feedback. And you mentioned Henrico. There's a possibility, as I understand it, that some of the other jurisdictions may administer at least a portion of their phases. I guess that's still yet to be worked out through the working group. So I guess we potentially have that situation with more than just Henrico as far as project administration.
Yeah, I thought that might be the case. So you all need to think about that and provide some direction about how you want it to work.
And I guess even thinking beyond fall line, once we allocate rounds, the next round of CVTA funds for the next 4 years, there will be locally administered projects within that group of projects as well. So I guess, do we need to separately work on a standard project agreement in general between localities and CVTA.
I think so.
Not that I'm giving you more work to do, but
Well, that's the nature of it. It's all good.
all right, does anybody have any other questions or comments? And I can't see hands raised, so just speak up if you have something.
Todd Sparb.
Or-
I would say that the agreement that you're referring to Fall Line Trail and Henrico specifically, but you need a standard agreement between the CVTA and a locality to
Right.
spend regional funds for a
Right.
locality. So it should just be general.
Inclusive of following.
Yes. Yeah.
I agree with that unless Eric sees an issue, but I mean, it sounds like that works because that's how we're modifying the VDOT agreement.
Hey, Todd, this is Shane.
Yes, Shane.
Hey, I just wanted to let y'all know that ultimately when we all come to agreement on this SPA, it will have to go in front of the CTB. I'll have to present it to them. So just know there's going to be a little bit of a delay when we finally finalize the document before it's executed, that it will have to get on the agenda for the CTB. So just want to make sure everybody's aware of that delay.
Yeah, thanks, Shane. I expect it will be like the MOA, the CVTA VDOT MOA that was approved. So it'll sort of follow that kind of a process.
Thank you for that, Shane. And it's also my understanding there's a draft MOU floating around between the state and the impacted localities regarding maintenance of the trail. So does that, I don't know if that also has to go to the CTB, but maybe they could potentially be packaged together, or if they do.
Todd, I have yet to see officially that MOU. So if you have a copy, I'd love to see it. But yes, I assume that will probably have to go to CTB as well. But
As would I. I'd love to see that if that's floating around, because I think the CVTA is inherently interested in the ongoing maintenance of this project, seeing as the funding for it is flowing largely through the CVTA. So CVTA has a stake in that. So one way or another, I think the CVTA needs to either be a part of that or be involved in it. So if you could share that, that'd be great.
Agreed. All I can say is I saw an earlier version of it float through, so I don't know if anybody else has any insight. So we can try to track that down on our end. Shane, you may ask questions on your end as well, see status and where it is.
will do. But much like when you just said that, it gets very quiet when I ask that question. So.
Understood. All right. So I guess we're, as we are in many of these items now, have a time rush to get some documents in place that need multiple layers of approval. So I guess it's job security, right, Eric?
Let's hope so. Thanks.
All right. Any other questions, comments, observations on the Fall Line working group effort and Fall Line in general? All right. Hearing none, moves us to CVTA TAC member comments. Item 8. Anybody have any comments for the group?
I do. Ms. Barr. Do we have something in place that addresses how we will deal with, I think it's easy, surpluses on CVTA regional projects? That'll just go back in the pot, I would assume. But shortfalls, do we have something in place to address shortfalls? I can't remember whether our framework document talks about if a project is short on funding. Chessa might know.
I don't think so.
If it was in that CMAC RSTP document, then it is probably in this one.
Let me do a
Anyway.
quick check while you continue.
And I didn't know whether finance had done something with that. I don't really think that they have.
I
I
don't,
think they've been more administrative, doing the
Yeah.
administrative end.
finance has not, our representative was not on the last finance working group meeting, so I don't know what they discussed there, but I know nothing has gone to the full finance committee yet, but I know that's on the agendas for January.
Okay. Then another item that we need to get working on are our locality, the local funds, local expenditure plans, and the GRTC FY23 budget and regional public transportation plan. I've talked to Chet about that before and suggested that we should try to get these plans in mid-February. I know that last year we were kind of scrambling towards the end of the fiscal year or even later, trying to get stuff submitted. So we need to put this out so that people know that they should be working on it and getting it turned in so that we're not rush.
Yes, good point, Barb. So as I recall from the bylaws, I put them in front of me, but the local spend plans are supposed to go through the TAC for basically oversight review, and I think then to finance, and then to the full authority for I don't know if it's a full approval or just for informational purposes. I don't know if anybody else recalls. Chet, do you remember?
I think it was approval to be safe.
Okay. And then
That's a step.
GRTCs goes through Plan RVA to the TPO, correct? For done in collaboration with them. But we've now tried to link up the schedule so they're roughly the same between GRTC and the local spend plans. So Barb is suggesting a February timeline for submission, so that would, I guess, put it in the March timeframe for the various subcommittee and full approvals, March, April timeframe. Does that work as far as you know, Chet?
Yeah, I think so. One thing that I wanted to raise everybody's attention is we're having some serious discussions internally about whether it will be possible to go to an every other month authority meeting starting sometime this spring, just so there's time to process and not surprise people every single time we have a board meeting with new information and other stuff. That wouldn't impact TAC or finance. I don't think we can afford to not meet every month, but that may impact the timeline for full approval when the authority has to take action on things. But I don't know. I don't think that would impact this. I think we have enough lead time to make sure we have enough coverage to get everything done ahead of time, like Barb's suggesting.
Right. Yeah, and certainly some localities do have to take these spend plans either for formal action by their local governing bodies or at least informal approval by administration. So there's a time needs to be built into the schedule for that as well. So I would offer that I think February is probably a reasonable time frame on our end. I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts on that.
If we did it, if we said people need to get it in by February 1st, then we could consider it at the February 14th TAC meeting. And then finance could deal with it at their March 9th meeting. And then that would give CVTA the full authority, whether they meet in April or May. And you can see that's already squeezy.
No, that's
So-
reasonable. I think we have to acknowledge that these are simply plans that can be revised and adjusted as the year progresses. So it doesn't lock you in. No ability to adjust.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Doreen.
And I'm not sure, I know for the spending plans, that revision and revise is something that we've done kind of throughout the process. So it's C-minute. So I don't know how the public transportation plan annually, I don't know if it's something that they would submit and change, but I would speak to GRTC's staffing needs when it comes to the planning. I think that the micro mobility study, I'm not quite sure where that is, and I know Patricia's on the call, but just to speak up for GRTC, I don't know if they would be amenable to the February date. And while I do understand we are, we're setting a date, I just did want to say that there's parts of there's studies that they would input into that process. So I just wanted to say that if we do hear anything from GRTC, and at least be willing to see if a March timeframe or April works. I just wanted to put that out there.
No, thank you for raising that. Patricia, I don't know if you want to respond to that or consider that.
Yeah, thank you, Diana. Yeah, I'm not sure that we could make the February turnaround work. Donor mentioned our microtransit study, which is not supposed to be set to finishing up till mid-January, which feeds into the regional transportation plan. So we kind of need one done before the other.
So that the microtransit studies scheduled to be completed January of 22, 23.
22.
Okay. I assume there's the ability to amend the GRTC plan. Again, I don't have the bylaws in front of me. Just I don't know if you were able to pull up your own for something. Not to put you on the spot.
Yeah, and that's why I said that we hadn't done theirs like we did the spending plans, even with the quarterly update, I don't believe.
What's the question again? I'm sorry.
If
maybe
GRTC, I'm sorry, sir.
No, I think you'd already researched what you were gonna look at. I didn't know if somebody had the bylaws in front of them.
So if we moved it to March 1st, TAC could consider it at their March 14th meeting. I mean, maybe it would need to be a few days before March 1st so that it could go out in the agenda packet. But it could go to the March 14th TAC meeting. And then finance meets on
March 9th,
April.
April 13th.
Yeah, so we would have, so yeah, tax after finance. So then it would be April 13th to finance, and then the authority either May or June if they go on a every other month schedule.
At this point, Chet, we don't have a firm date as to when the full authority would consider going to every other month, correct? It's just kind of out there for
Right.
consideration. So
Yeah, it's not really out there yet. I guess right now today it is.
I know we've had internal discussions with the chair.
Yeah.
Regarding, I think there's certainly an appetite and desire for it based on feedback he's received. Just with the understanding of in due time when things were more established. So
Mr. Chair, I'm just looking over the bylaws and I can't see where the finance committee necessarily reviews GRTC. It does explicitly say that in the TAC that we review, comment, and recommend GRTC's annual plan. So I think in the past we have included the finance committee, but I don't see it spelled out if that, buys them any more time, I guess. I don't know.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Eric.
the bylaws section, Article 5, subsection B regarding the Finance Committee, it does say that subparagraph E, reviewing the Finance Committee shall be responsible for advising the authority on all financial matters and overseeing financial activities undertaken by the authority, including reviewing GRTC's or its successors' expenditure of funds received through the authority on a quarterly basis.
But that's expenditure, sir. Okay.
What was the topic that you?
Their public transportation plan.
And this one is expenditures of funds received through the authority on a quarterly basis, which is them saying, this is what I've spent the money on. But,
Well, I don't think we need to lock it down today, but certainly I guess start building that timeline backwards based on the multiple reviews and approvals. So Chad, if you want to start working on that and any feedback you need from the group.
Sure.
All right, any other comments, questions? Barb, I think we spent more time on your member comment than we have the rest of the items today. But it was necessary, so thank you. All right, our next meeting is scheduled for Monday, January 10th. Soon we will still be 100% virtual, and we'll have a scheduled start time of 1 p.m. again.
We will be moving to in person.
We will be.
January.
Yes, the City of Richmond's emergency declaration is coming to a close at the end of the calendar year, so that requires the public bodies to be meeting pursuant to the normal conditions under FOIA. So in-person meetings is the norm.
So I think you just answered the question, but this is considered a public body as a subcommittee.
Correct.
Darn it. Okay. All right. Well then, Chad, I would ask that when you do send the agenda out for the January meeting, you more than gently remind everybody that it will be in person, since we've gotten very used to this format for the life of this body. So.
Agreed. We'll do so.
All right. Thank you. Unless anybody has anything else, wish everybody happy holidays, and we can adjourn.
thank you. Happy holidays.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.